Well, good afternoon, everyone. We still have folks coming on. We're a little bit early here, but I just had to, one of our presenters just had to text him the password to log on. So hopefully we'll be seeing Johnny here shortly. I noticed there's one phone on here listed as iPhone with no name. I'm kind of curious who that is. If you don't mind saying who it is attending. And I'll unmute your, oh, I can't unmute them. I can ask you to unmute. Still not seeing who. Oh, there you go. Yeah, you just unmuted your phone. Wanted to see who this was. Okay, well, they muted their phone again. Not sure who it is. So everyone else's name shows up here nicely. We're just missing one. So, or missing one name. Well, everyone, we'll just give a few more minutes. We're still waiting for one of our presenters to show up. Can everyone hear me all right? Give me a thumbs up. Okay. Couple can. Okay, very good. Yeah, so we'll just give a couple more minutes or another minute or two for other folks to get on. We're still waiting for Johnny Rydeen, our other presenter, to hop on here. He had messaged me about the password and I gave it to him, so he should be here anytime. I see we have a couple of our fellow guides on here. There might even be a few people on here that have more experience than a couple of us, so don't judge if you think I'm wrong. Well, if you think our advice us young guys give you, if you think we're wrong, well, you just have to keep it to yourself. Mike Zwang should be on there. Mike, you keep coming on and then getting kicked off again, coming in, getting kicked off, but I think you're in now for good. Okay, Johnny's almost here. He's having a couple issues, but we might get started without him. We'll give him another minute or two. Looks like we're going to have a pretty good turnout on here. I hope you're ready, Lyle, to impart all kinds of wisdom on us. Jason, if everyone takes it, well, for those of you who have a screen in front of you, you can all take a look at J.K. Bunch's pretty mug there. He's got a bear butt behind him, so you can all have some idea what a bear almost in the field looks like.
The butt. This is what the butt looks like.
That's what the butt looks like. Okay, I'm seeing if I see Johnny on here, but I don't see him yet. Well, I think we'll get started. I'm sure some more folks will join us as we go. So I guess once again, I'd like to welcome everyone back. This is our first wildlife seminar like this that we've ever done. So we're there'll be two other presenters with me. We have Lyle Becker. He has guided on Kodiak. He's an outfitter up on out of the Brooks Range, also has an area on the Alaska Peninsula, has been guiding here a long time. And then we have Johnny Rydeen, who will be joining us. Johnny's guided down on Kodiak for a lot of years on the peninsula. He guides sheep hunters and also guides bear out in Western Alaska. So he'll be talking. Both Lyle and Johnny are registered guides. I'm a master guide. Again, my name's Sam Rohr. For those who don't know me, I operate down here on Kodiak Island, and so I'll kind of be bringing you a Kodiak perspective, and then I think Lyle and Johnny probably a little bit more of a perspective from where they hunt. So we're kind of the format we're going to go is like each of us are going to take about 10 minutes to kind of have our spiel to do our talk, and then after that we're going to open things up for questions. So we're all going to talk about a little bit different aspects of bear hunting, things you know, that we think are important for potential clients to hear. And so with that, I'm going to get started, and I'm really going to focus talking about preparations to make on the front end of a bear hunt to Kodiak, or frankly a bear hunt anywhere in Alaska. But you know, this is advice that's applicable to a first-time guy coming on your very first hunt to Alaska. It's applicable to a guy who's been on numerous different hunts. The first thing I guess I want to say is, when you come on a hunt, you expect your guide to be prepared. You expect the outfitter to be prepared. You want the guide to be prepared. Well, that runs both ways. The guide, as the guy in the field, we want our hunters to show up prepared. So what's that look like? When you come on a brown bear hunt, you need to be prepared. You need to be physically prepared. You need to be mentally prepared. And you need to be prepared with your actual gear, the things that you're going to use, you know, over the course of the hunt. You come on a Kodiak hunt, you know, so the first thing I'll talk about is gear. You come on a Kodiak hunt, and you better be prepared to experience all 4 seasons. And you could experience all 4 seasons in one day. We could have snow, we could have sun where you're stripping off your rain jackets. And then the wind can start to blow and knock all the leaves off the tree, and you think you're in the fall. I mean, we can just have, we can have everything. And so having the right gear is critical. You could find yourself, you know, so on a spring bear hunt, we could spend 10, 12, 14 hours a day just glassing. You're just sitting on the beach, you're sitting on a hillside, you could be in the wind, you could be in the weather, you're using your binoculars and a spot and scope. And there you go, I see Johnny Rydeen joined us. But you could be sitting in that weather all day long. The only way you're going to see those big bears, the bears we're after, is if you can stick to it and handle that cold weather. And you're not going to do that if you don't have the right gear. So the first thing for being prepared, bring the right gear. When you're planning a hunt, when you've decided who you're going to book your hunt with, ask for an equipment list. Any good outfitter out there should be able to provide you with a complete list of what you need. We don't put that list together for fun. We put it together because it means something. We want you to follow it. We had a hunter a couple years ago show up at camp with no hip boots. Said, "Where's your hip boots?" And he said, "Well, I didn't think I need them." We said, "Well, did you look at your equipment list?" "Yeah, I looked at my equipment list." "Well, your equipment list said bring hip boots, so why didn't you bring them?" And the hunter said, "Well, I couldn't imagine why I'd need hip boots." Well, I wouldn't put them on the list if you don't need them. So the point is, if something's on the equipment list, make sure you bring it. Don't skimp on gear either. You know, you're going on an expensive hunt. You're taking time off from work. You're flying to Alaska. You have a lot of money wrapped up into this. Come prepared with the right gear. That's important. But I want to back up. That's talking about bringing gear. I want to back up before that. How do you even choose who you're going bear hunting with? Call references. Every good guide out there, every good outfitter out there should be willing to give you references of folks who have come on hunts before with them. Call those references, email those references, talk to guys. In particularly, ask for a reference from a hunter who came who wasn't successful. If you're looking to book a hunt with me and I give you 3 references and you call them and every one of those 3 guys tells you about how they killed a 10-foot bear, you need to call me back and say, "Sam, I want a reference of a hunter who wasn't successful, who didn't get a bear. Let's see the full picture, not just the hunters who killed 10-footers on the first day." It's important. And if an outfitter is not willing to give you a reference on someone who wasn't successful, I don't know, you might want to do a little bit more homework. Look elsewhere. It's important to talk to those references that an outfitter gives you. But here's one other thing I'm going to tell you about that. Countless times I've had you've have a client show up and he might show up with some misunderstandings of what to expect. I wouldn't say countless times, but it's happened. A hunter shows up and he comes unprepared. He says, "Well, your reference, the guy I talked to who hunted with you told me this." So when you call references, clients tell you good information. Those former clients tell you good information, but just because a client tells you it, you still need to come back to your outfitter and listen to what your outfitter says. You might talk to one of my clients who hunted and had 10 days of beautiful weather, and he can't imagine why you would need a raincoat on a spring bear hunt in Kodiak. And I say, no, you need a raincoat. In those instances, you need to listen to the advice. You need to listen to what your outfitter's telling you. Take into account what the references say, but at the end of the day, you need to listen to your outfitter. So I want to talk a little bit about realistic expectations on bear size. Everyone who comes on a bear hunt wants to kill a 10-foot bear. It just goes without saying. A guy calls, says, "Hey, I want to come hunting on a bear hunt. I want to kill a 10-footer. Well, everyone wants to kill a 10-footer. Not everyone's going to get to kill a 10-footer. So what's a realistic bear? I gave that some thought. What's an average size Kodiak bear? That the average bear that comes off of Kodiak, the average boar is probably 8.5 to 9 foot range. This would be island wide across resident hunters and non-resident hunters. Probably closer to 8 to 8.5 foot would be the average boar size. The conversation I have with my clients is realistic expectations is a 9-foot bear. A 9-foot bear is a good bear on Kodiak. That's a mature bear. That's a bear that's at least 7 years old. Could be 6 or 7 years old. It's a good bear. Most guys should be happy to go home with a 9-foot bear. If you're one of those guys who says, no, you know what, it's a 10-footer or nothing, it's 9.5-footer or nothing, that's absolutely fine. You need to talk that out with your guide before you come. But just realize that those size bears aren't around every corner. You're going to have to put in some time, and you might not find a bear like that on your hunt. You need to be realistic. I like to tell guys, if you pass on a 9-foot bear, you got to be willing to go home without a bear. If you're willing to do that, then I am more than happy to pass on 9-foot bears all day with you. But you just, the hunter needs to understand that you might not have a chance at a bigger bear than that. That's a 9-foot bear is a realistic expectation. And then I want to talk about hide quality a little bit. Everyone wants to shoot a bear with really good hair, but sometimes the whole discussion of what a rub bear looks like gets a little bit, now we might call it a rub bear, but not everyone's using the same lingo. So that's a good thing to have a conversation with your guide, your individual guide, when you're in the field. What does a rub bear look like? Are we looking at a rub bear? Am I comfortable shooting a bear that has some rub? Here's a good question. What if we see a really, really big bear that has a lot of rub on it? Is that a bear you want to go home with? Are you going to be happy with that bear? Well, I'll tell you, a lot of clients would be happy with that bear, but plenty of clients wouldn't be happy. What about a smaller bear, say an 8.5 foot bear that has a perfect hide? Maybe you only want to shoot a 9 footer, but then you see this 8.5 footer with perfect hair. Is that a bear you're going to be happy with? Well, those are discussions you need to have with your guide. I can't answer that for you. I know in my own mind what I would be happy with, but ultimately you're the hunter. The question comes down to, what are you happy with? And you need to be able to communicate that with your guide, sitting in the field on the mountainside. Those are conversations you have with your individual guide who's taken you. One of the other things I like to talk with people about is back to this idea of passing on a bear. If you see a 9 foot bear on the first day and you don't shoot it, but then on the last day you're willing to shoot a 9 foot bear, but then you go home and you don't get your bear because you pass them on the first day. That's stuff like that happens. And I guess my advice to guys is, don't pass up a bear on the first day you'd be happy with on the last day. Big bears aren't behind every tree. If you have a good chance on a bear that you'd be happy with, take them. The flip side of that is guys shooting on the last day bears that they honestly really didn't want to shoot. And then what you find is you get a hunter who goes home and you shot a bear, and then you're kind of disappointed you actually shot that bear. And that's something I like to discuss with clients. I would much rather have a hunter go home without a bear than to go home having taken a bear that he's disappointed he took. That's in my mind, that's about the worst possible outcome, is you go home with a bear and then you wish you'd never taken him in the first place. So just something to keep in mind. I want to talk a little bit more about judging bears. Big bears are generally pretty easy to judge. You know, a 10 foot bear, 9.5, 10 foot bear walks out on the middle of the hillside, and almost always your guides can take one look at that bear and they know it's a good bear. They're going to be all over it. But sometimes those smaller bears, those 8 footers, those slippery 8.5 footers to 9 footers, you know, we're talking bears that are 5 years old to 8 or 9 years old. Those bears can be tricky to judge sometimes. You need to have you need to give your guide some time to look those bears over. You can't expect that your guide's going to be able to know immediately how big that bear is. Give your guide some time. Trust what your guide says as he's figuring out, thinking through how big that bear is. One of the an example that always comes to my mind, I remember there's not very many guides in Alaska who've taken more than one 30-inch skulled bear, but I know one guide who's taken 2 bears with 30-inch skulls. He's a master guide, incredibly experienced. He's a top hand in any camp you put him in. He told me a story about getting talked into shooting a small bear, and this was after he'd taken his 2 30-inch skulled bears. He knew what a big bear was. He looked at a bear. He said it wasn't very big. The client kept pushing him. Oh, I think that bear's bigger. I think that bear's bigger, and pushed him and pushed him. And finally, he started to second guess himself. He started to doubt himself. And lo and behold, he realized maybe I was misjudging that bear. They go over there, they shoot the bear. And of course, the guide was right all along. It was a little bear. And you know what? We all make mistakes. Mistakes can be made, but I'll tell you, don't try to talk your guide into thinking it's a bigger bear than what your guide's telling you. If your guide says it's an 8 foot bear, trust your guide. It's probably an 8 foot bear. The last thing I'll talk about, and this goes a little bit towards why you come on a bear hunt. Everyone comes on a bear hunt for a different reason. But I have watched guys come on bear hunts, and what should be an absolute great time dissolves into a stressful time for the client, because he's too worried about what his friends back home might think. What if I'm coming to a Kodiak, I want to come home with a 10-footer. What if I come home with a 9-footer? What will my friends think? What will my hunting buddies think? What if I don't get a bear? What if I come home without a bear? My friends know how much money I spent on this trip. And I would just urge you, as you prepare for your hunt, as you think about your hunt, the focus should be on why you're there, why you want to be hunting, you enjoying that hunt. Don't spend your time worried about what other people might think of the animal you take. You need to be hunting for yourself, and just having a good time and enjoying the full experience. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Lyle. I went a little bit longer than I meant to, but I'm going to hand it over to Lyle and then Johnny.
All right, can everyone hear me? Give me a thumbs up, somebody. All right, good. Thank you, Sam. As Sam said, there are people in this room that have way more bear experience than I do. I worked for Dick Rohr a time or two. I've had the advantage of working for a lot of different older experienced guides in several different areas, and I think that's been a benefit to me. I remember years and years ago, I think Jason may have only been an assistant guide, but Jason Bunch and I were sitting down together at a Big Game Commercial Services Board meeting, and for a little while, there was this kind of evening seminars that older master guides were given, and I'm pretty sure Gary LaRose Jr. was given a seminar on caribou or something like that. I forget exactly what it was, but we got done, and Jason turned to me and said, I feel like I'm pretty proficient in whatever it was. Maybe it was goats, actually. He said, but there's always something to learn. So I think from multiple people chiming in, hopefully we'll pick up a thing or two here that we can all benefit from. Sam kind of dug down into some of the points. What I'm going to say is probably even more basic than what he's going over. A principle of excellence in virtually any field is that what separates the professionals from the amateurs is that the professionals have absolutely mastered the fundamentals. So in any discipline of life, you've got a set of fundamentals. You want to learn to play guitar, you got to know how to play chords. You got to make exchanges between them. It's just the steps you have to go to get to the next thing. But whatever the discipline is, there are a list of fundamentals. And the pros have those fundamentals down, and they've got them drilled into their mind so completely that it's second nature to them. And so that's one thing that I kind of notice. The more time I spend in the field, the more mistakes you make and the more successes you have. You look back on the successes and you say, there was nothing really that mysterious about why that went well. It was just the fundamentals came together. And so as I contemplate that, these are what I think of as the fundamentals of being successful on a brown bear or grizzly bear hunt, but I'm mostly talking about brown bear. Brown bear hunting is glassing intensive no matter what. There's just no way around it. There's a difference between spring and fall hunting, but most of the time when we're hunting big brown bear, the majority of our work is going to be with our eyes. And so, commit your mind early to recognizing this is kind of long, boring work. Bring the best possible glass that you can. Spend some money on your glass if you haven't to that point. There's a divided opinion on this, but an earbud in one ear listening to an audiobook, if that keeps you from getting lazy and staying sharp and staying alert, that's actually better than both ears with nothing and your mind wanders, and pretty soon you're just off in la la land. So do whatever it takes to make sure that you're as intense glassing as you possibly can. There have been multiple big bears that I think back on that I only had a moment's look at them through the brush. I was looking at the right place at the right time. They just happened to move just at the right moment. I got a fleeting glimpse at them to know, hey, there's a critter right there. we need to go get closer and take a look at that, or I really need to keep the spotting scope locked down on that spot until he shows himself. And when he finally did, things came together. But if I hadn't have been looking at that moment, at that time, we'd have lost him. And I'd have never connected with that animal. So fundamental number one, glassing intensive. Fundamental number two, mind the wind. A bear might forgive you if you goof up and he sees you. He might forgive you if you goof up and he hears you. He will not forgive you if you goof up and he smells you. There's just no getting around it. So a bear is a nose animal. When you're hunting him, have that in your mind. Fundamental number two, mind the wind. Fundamental number three is executing a stalk. Joey's here, but I don't think his dad is here. The mantra that we joke about is strike like lightning. When all the components come together, you need to be able to capitalize on the moment. And so from the hunter's point of view, the most important things you can do to be ready for that moment are, one, be in great physical shape, the best possible shape you can be in, and two, be able to and willing to shoot quickly, accurately, in less than ideal conditions, and follow up with a second good shot. So from the hunter's point of view, get in good shape and practice. Again, these are basic fundamentals, but when everything comes together, sometimes the difference between being able to execute and not is actually a fairly small margin. So perfect that fundamental. Fundamental number four, this is more from the guide side, judging the animal. It's critical. And as Sam said, most guides, you usually don't have a problem judging between a 10-footer and a kick out. That's not the issue. It's when you're trying to cross that line and say, as the roars like to call, a slippery 9-footer, which to the rest of the state is an 8.5 honest bear. When you're trying to get within this margin of, that's a boar, but is that actually a fairly old sow, dried up sow, or is that kind of a young age boar? It's all wet. I'm not getting a good look at him. He's laying down, whatever it is. So judging is a fundamental, but it takes practice. And even then, on occasion, things go wrong. Hello, Mr. Roar. Fundamental number five, knowing the area. This is the hunter's main disadvantage when he comes on a trip. All the rest of these fundamentals, for the most part, the hunter and the guide can work on together and both be very proficient in. But hopefully the guide has a very good working knowledge of the area, because over time you learn travel routes, you learn what cover holds bear and what cover looks good, but for whatever reason, the bears just don't like to hole up there. You learn where food sources are and what cover they're working between the food and the cover. And so that just takes time. There's no getting around it. And then again, kind of to bring the whole thing full circle, fundamental number six, there's a small bird that lives in Alaska. It's endemic to the world, but the northern shrike is a weird little songbird. It's in the songbird family, which means it doesn't have good talons to grip with. It's got songbird feet, but it's predatory, and its Latin name is sentinel butcherer. It sings and it butchers. And so the shrike is a weird critter. It's a pretty little bird, looks kind of like a gray jay. It's got a black stripe on its face, and you'll see him perched up in the top of a tree, not doing anything. And you'll look away, and he went somewhere, but he's right back there again. And then for a moment, you'll see him flutter over something and then nosedive into the ground. Because he's a songbird, he can't grip with those talons. So when he nosedives, he drives that beak into the back of a mouse's head, and then picks it up and carries it and has to jam it into a little fork in a tree to tear pieces off. And like the loggerhead shrike in the Midwest will impale things on a barbed wire fence to tear pieces off because he can't grip with his feet. But the point is, be the shrike. A shrike picks the best glassing spot in the area and he stays there. And then when the opportunity is right, bam, he strikes like lightning. So I know it's a little bit corny, but I think that's a decent summary of what we're going for. And from the hunter's point of view, why I'm making a big deal about this, from the hunter's point of view, you have to kind of get into the head of your guide. Your guide's going to do things that you think, this doesn't make sense. So and I'll try to be quick here because I know Johnny needs his time. Shifting now from fundamentals to deliberate advice to the hunter. First off, trust your guide. You hired this guy for a reason. You've spent a fair amount of money with him. Hopefully you've done your research. And when you walk into camp, I mean, there's assumed that there's a level of confidence. Partway through the hunt, you might start to lose confidence. If something's going wrong, tell your guide frankly what's bothering you and let him reply. But otherwise, you need to trust him. And so, you know, some stalks, you might see a bear and everything about this looks great, and you think it's just going to come together. And your guide says, no, the wind is all wrong to do this, or it's 5 minutes before dark. We can go try it, but the probability that this is going to go well is lower than the probability of botching it to try better later on. And it's really frustrating, but you do have to trust your guide at some level. So please go into the hunt having some level of, you know, you put your trust, your confidence in this guy to give him your money. Please trust him. The next point is, Sam went over this, follow the ever-loving gear list. And I know some regions are different than others. My gear list probably looks a little different than Sam's, looks a little different from Johnny's, looks a little different for Fegis's, whatever. But we've gone through trial and error. We make modifications. Please follow it closely. The next thing is get in the best physical shape you possibly can. We recognize this isn't usually as hard as a sheep hunt, but I've done a few stalks that people have gotten done with that they've said, that was harder than when I killed a sheep with you. You put hip boots on or waders, start going up through snow that's mashed potatoes over your knees, and it's no fun. You just have to persevere and get through it. And the better shape you're in, the higher likely, one, the more fun you'll have. The better shape you're in, the more fun you'll have. And second off, the more successful you'll be. Practice shooting and shooting in odd positions, especially offhand. I try to get everybody set up prone over a backpacker with a good solid rest, but sometimes it just doesn't come together, or your follow-up shot is rushed and something goofy happens. You know, if you don't have 300 rounds down the barrel before you come to camp, I'm a little disappointed. So I mean, I'm pointing that as a bare minimum. So put some time in with your gun in odd situations and odd shooting points. Advice for the hunter: glass, glass, glass. One of the first old timers I ever worked for when I got started said, you know, it's kind of funny. Some guys are a lot luckier than other guys, but those lucky guys, they all glass more too. You think there's any correlation to that? Well, yeah, I mean, again, I'm poking fun a little bit, but you as the hunter, yeah, your guide is probably going to spot more game than you. It's just nature of the beast. His eye is used to finding that thing. But play a game with him and try to outspot him. Put some money on it. Hey, 20 bucks on the next bear we spot. Just put the work in, because it is work. And then the last thing I have to say, and I'll let Johnny talk, is the Bible says he who perseveres to the end will be saved. I'm not giving a spiritual illustration here. I'm telling you, have it in your head that you're going to persevere to the very end of this hunt. Because if you start a hunt, things go well, and then for a couple days, maybe the weather goes just completely upside down. You're cold, you're wet, and you can't get dried out, and you're tired because that first day the hunter took you on a stalk and you got soaked to the bone, and you're kind of sore, and you didn't think it was going to quite be like this. And then you go a day where you're in the tent because it's blowing 60 knots. And then the next day you, whatever, you know, things just aren't going well and you're not seeing many bears. You can't let your mental, it's a mental game. You cannot let that prevent you from going out the next day and hunting hard. Persevere to the last day of the hunt, because some people, they mentally check out 2/3 of the way through the hunt, and it actually hampers them greatly for the rest of it. And as the guide's point of view, drives us crazy. We are committed to be here to the very end. Please commit yourself to be there with your full attention to the very end. Okay, I was going to make a comment about spring hunting versus fall hunting. The only thing that Sam, you know, there's hide rub considerations. There's you know, there's a number of varieties. In my area, spring hunting is physically harder work than fall hunting, and I think that's most areas. In my area, in the spring, a lot of bears are still in the mountains. In the fall, a lot of them are still fairly low. But, you know, from my point of view, the one thing just to keep in mind is in the spring, your days are so much longer. And a lot of times the weather's not quite as nasty. And so you end up having more daylight hours to look. In the fall, where I'm at, if there's a full moon or if you accidentally bump a bear, he's going nocturnal. So your margin of error just closed to this, and your whole opportunity may get very narrow. So when you're picking a hunt, those are questions you want to ask your outfitter. Okay, Johnny, you're up.
I'm looking for him to unmute him. Good job. Thank you there, Lyle. With some good points.
All right, you got me now?
There we got you, John.
All right, sorry about that, little computer issues here. But my name's John Rydeen. I've done a lot of bear hunting on Kodiak and the peninsula. Primarily, Kodiak is most of the experience I have. Coming up on the 20th season here, so I'm a little bit behind some guys in the room here. But I was going to talk primarily about three areas for a successful, Alaskan brown bear hunt. If you're coming up and going on one, one is what to expect. What's the hunt like? What's going to happen kind of on a day-to-day basis? What can I expect in that realm? And what are expectations for me as a hunter coming up that the guide has for me, or what expectations I might have upon the guide I'm going with? And the last one is, what gear do I bring? What's the right stuff as opposed to just a bunch of stuff? On Kodiak and the peninsula, it's fairly similar as far as hunting style. The number one thing is you can plan on, to me, is bad weather, and worse weather. Nice days are almost a bonus, as though you have them, but you just got to plan on pretty harsh weather. As I came in the industry and worked for a while, I've always heard you can plan on losing, about a third of your hunt to weather days. Obviously, it doesn't happen all the time, but if you go into it thinking that, it might be a little bit more enjoyable from a day-to-day basis. Guys ask me, what do I need to bring on a bear hunt? I always say a book and rain gear. You might have some tent time, and it's just going to be wet. But as far as the hunt goes, it's a sit and glass, and then go. You sit in the same knob. It's just mundane boredom, and then it's they say 98% pure boredom and 2% sheer terror is the MO that people say. But it happens anytime, and it happens fast when it does, and you forget about all that boredom and the mundaneness that you went through when it happens. But after doing a hunt, you realize what the end game is, and it can happen any time. It's like Groundhog Day. You do the same thing over and over, and it begins to be it's way more mental of a hunt than it is physical. The physicality helps, and that, if you're going on a bear hunt and to get ready, you should get yourself physically in shape, because you'll enjoy things better, because when you got to go, you got to go. But the mental aspect of things really is wearing, especially sitting in the weather and just, looking at almost nothing on a day-to-day basis at times. And then all of a sudden it goes. So, in a nutshell, that's kind of like just an overall what bear hunting is like. I tell a story almost every hunt I go on of a guy that hunted with me who he came out and he'd been saving up forever. Always wanted to Kodiak hunt, since he was a kid, and he came out there and just wanted the whole experience. And we never left the tent till day 8 because of weather. And, sitting in the tent for a week, thinking about all the money you spent, and you haven't even hunted till day 8, you get a lot of cabin fever, and it's pretty mind numbing just waiting on that kind of thing. And, he ended up, shooting a bear, but it took him the whole time. But just that mental awareness or wearing on you is a big deal, and a lot of people have a hard time with it, and especially in today's age with everything's happening so fast and now, and you got to be patient. So, as far as if you're coming on a hunt, I think there's some expectations, that guides have upon the hunter to come in, as well as the hunter should have of the guides. And if you're coming on a hunt, there's 2 things you got to plan on, and I know Lyle just touched on it, but staying the whole time. It sounds easy, you come on a 2-week bear hunt, you're like, well, I'm gonna hunt for 2 weeks, and it sounds great, but when you start getting into day 10, it's pretty wearing, and but you got to plan on staying till the very end if need be, because a lot of bears have been shot on day 15 of a bear hunt. But so I think it's important not to, I know I don't think it happens a lot, but it's happened where people just can't, they just go and they just want to get out. But things, you gotta plan on staying the whole time, and you gotta stay in the game. You gotta keep a positive attitude and stay in the game. And you look at your guide and the guides look at you as a hunting buddy. You're in this together. You're in the trenches. You're going through it. It is a roller coaster of a hunt, an emotional roller coaster. But you just kind of you get through it, and you get through it together, and it makes a difference if you just kind of go into it having that attitude. Now as hunters, if they look at their guide, they should be able to expect the same. Their guides are going to be in it with a good attitude. The ups and downs. It's a roller coaster at times. Things happen that are you don't like or didn't work out, and then there's things that you get excited about. So you just kind of try to keep the roller coaster at a minimum, the highs and the lows. But you want a guide that feels the same way you do, especially as to succeed. You want to get you want a guide that wants you to succeed as much as they would want to succeed on their own hunt. So I think it's important to kind of go into these hunts with these ahead of time, thinking about these expectations. As far as gear goes, I think I heard Lyle touch on this too. Most outfitters, I would say about everybody has a gear list, and I would follow it, whatever their gear list is. I don't know if one gear list would match for everyone, for everywhere, all that kind of stuff. But whatever outfitter you're going with, whatever they say, I would follow it as close as you can. Now I know for bear hunting, it's pretty general. All the terrain is it's wet and cold, and so staying dry is primary importance. With all the new technologies and gear advancement nowadays, with all the clothing and gear tents wise and stuff like that, it's really helped the hunter I don't know about better, but it just you can be out in the field more, and the more you're out of the tent and out there hunting, you get more, the more chance of success you have. And with all the new technologies in gear, rain gear and underlayers and all that kind of footwear and this and that, it really makes a difference in success. Now for me, it doesn't really matter, brand names. We all know the kind of, types of gear we all like, and they're all very good. But in brown bear hunting, just rain gear. I wear 2 rain jackets at times. I carry with me just because it's wet, and when you're, besides just sitting in the rain, if you're walking through brush, it's driving it in India. And so you might not do a whole lot of walking like on a sheep hunt on brown bear hunting, but just staying dry with rain gear. And I wear a lot of waders at times instead of just rain pants, waders, wader boots, Sims waders I like just because of the way they fit. You can hike in them a lot better. They're not as baggy, and they're not made for hunting in, but they work out well, I think. I guess one piece of gear that I guess it's not a new thing, kind of new to me. I just started wearing them, but it is a bit of a game changer. Sealskin socks, if anybody knows what they are, they're waterproof socks, and they are one item that it really makes a difference, keeping your feet dry from saturated boots from day to day that just don't dry out overnight. So if anybody's looking at any kind of gear to get, those are one thing I would say are pretty handy. Another is one thing I see a lot is from hunters is backpacks. Now backpacks are tough because everybody kind of wears them differently and likes a different style, but I think most of us wear Barney's backpacks, up here. Most hunters don't necessarily need a big Barney's pack, but the good things about them are you can hang your gun on them. And I'm a big fan of being able to hang your gun when you're bear hunting. One, it's accessible. It's just easy to whip it off in case you need it. You're in bear country, or things happen quick, whether good or bad, you just need your gun quick. It's not tied in your pack. It's not, under 15 buckles that you got to stop and get it out. So a lot of internal packs, they're starting to make little hangers and this and that, and it's coming around a little bit. But if you can figure out how to hang your gun on your pack, if it's not an external one, it'd be to me, it's a benefit. As far as guns go, a lot of guys ask, what kind of gun, how big does it need to be? What gun do I need? I just say what gun you shoot the best is the best one. Because in my experience, I've seen guys bring up cannons for guns, and you're never going to need it unless you go on a bear hunt. And most guys living in the lower 48, this is like their one hunt that they need a really big caliber gun, and they just, it's not fun to shoot those things, so you don't shoot them much, and you're just not comfortable with them. Obviously, a 300 caliber or bigger is what recommended. But if you're going to bring a really big gun, in the 375s, 416s, that kind of thing, just shoot it. Know your gun. Know how it acts. Know how it kicks. Don't be scared of it if you're going to come, and just be comfortable with the gun you bring. I think is the best one to use. And lastly, I guess just a couple of things of advice. If you're booking a hunt, I would say to guys that are coming on a hunt, if you find an outfitter you want to come with or thinking about, I always say just call the references. If you have questions about what it's like, where you're going, where they hunt, how things are going, call references. I think that's the most accurate. You're going to get, answer all the little questions you might not think about asking, especially as far as an outfitter guide, giving a spiel. There's things that I don't even think about that hunters do. And so hunters talk to other hunters. I think they get a lot of good information between each other. And one thing is, or the next thing is, when you come on a hunt, is keep your expectations realistic. I mean, we all want to shoot the King Kong, and they're out there, but they're not behind every bush. And I mean, just try to come on a hunt and show up, but try to enjoy it the whole way through. Try not to let if you don't see, because anything can happen. Weather comes in, the hunt just is slow or this and that. But if you can kind of go into it with a good attitude and keep your expectations realistic on, what's there, what you're looking for, what's feasible to walk away with, I think helps out, rather than getting out there and thinking, wow, I had no idea this would be like this. So with that, that's all I have. I'll give it back to you, Sam.
Okay, thanks, John. I appreciate it. Thanks, Lyle. Really appreciate you guys being on here. Just as a reminder for all of our listeners, we have a little bit of time for questions before the GOAT seminar starts. Before we take questions, just wanted to remind everyone that you can go back onto the main Expo page. You can set appointments with individual guides for one-on-one Zoom meetings. I really encourage you to do that. And you can talk one-on-one and with guides you're interested in. So with that, I'll open it up. We have a few minutes to take questions. If you want to aim your question at one of the three of us, do so, or if it's just a general question, I'll pick on one of the three of us to answer it. So with that, any questions? Jason, go ahead there, Jason.
I'll steer this to Sam, and then you guys can pipe in. My question is, if a hunter asks you before you book a hunt, if they ask you, what's my chances of success? How do you answer that?
That's a good question, Jason. The question, I try to talk them through. Generally I'm going to talk to him about a spring hunt. What's a spring hunt? I take 10 spring bear hunters, and 6 to 8 of those guys will go home with bears. Hopefully it's more than 6. It might be more like 8 or 9, but it really comes down to what kind of physical shape you're in and what kind of bears you're looking for. And so you can't separate success from expectations and the physical prep you put into the hunt. And so that's why I try to communicate that with hunters. I want to be honest, because I don't want to oversell something and have a client up there who's then, if you give a guy unreasonable expectations, he's gonna have unreasonable expectations. So I just like to be honest. And if it's a 70-year-old who has 2 replaced knees and only wants a 10-footer, with perfect hair, I'm going to tell him that we're going to work real hard, but it's going to be pretty tough. And if it's a young guy who just wants to shoot a nice representative, I'm going to tell him, you know, he's got a 90% chance of going home with a bear. I'll kick it over to Lyle or John.
Yeah, I pretty.
Briefly, go ahead, Johnny. Go ahead, Johnny.
Oh, well, for the most part, you know, what Sam said, you know, I guess a bit of when you say success, partially is what's their definition of success. Is success a 10-foot bear, or success a bear, or success just enjoying the hunt? So it kind of depends on that a little bit, but, you know, I think Sam's, you know, right on. You kind of got to just talk about what, you know, what you've done in the past, what it's like, and what, you know, we're seeing bears, we're shooting bears, and the things, you know, your physical ability and the weather. There's a lot of things that go into it. But as far as success goes, I think it depends on what they deem success as.
Lyle, anything to add? If not, I saw, yeah, anything to add there?
I don't have much to add. The only thing I was going to say is, and I'm sure every outfitter is a little different, but where I'm at, my spring and fall success rate's a little different. And I've had a lot more archery hunters the last few years, mostly in the fall. So that's the other thing. I think when a client asks that, it's an honest question. They're trying to get a sense for something, and it's the real issue is, how do you fact check the answer? I mean, from the hunter's point of view, how do you fact check the answer? The only way I know to do that is, here's the list of all the hunters I've taken the last 3 years and all their numbers. Call them. Some of them did great, some of them didn't. So back to your point, Sam, I think a more accurate read on what's this guy like and what are my odds like would at least include an answer of, let me talk to someone that didn't kill something. Because again, I hear success rates come out of areas and I think, I know better than that. But other than, you know, doing an audit on this guy's hunt records and tracking it down, there's no real way to get to the bottom of that answer. Yeah. So anyway, that's all I have. Go ahead.
Okay, thanks, Lyle. Steve Sminsky, you had a question. You had your hand raised there. You have to unmute your phone and then go right ahead. And I think, Steve, it's *6 to unmute if you're calling in on a dial-up phone. There you go.
I had the button hit, but I lost it. You guys talked about calibers. How about bullet type and shot placement? Can you talk a little bit about that? Do you have a preferred type? Do guys bring up too tough a bullet, too soft a bullet?
Good question, Steve. Real good question. Lyle, why don't you take first swing at that?
It is a great question. A lot of money is made by the various sporting companies defending their construction of bullets and whatnot. My thought is, at this point in the market, there are so many good quality options available that I've got used to just telling someone, I'd like you to shoot a premium bullet, and that's almost completely what people are going to bring anyway. It's so rare that somebody shows up with something that doesn't actually perform well, at least in my experience, at this point, that I don't get wrapped around the axle on that. I'm gonna give an answer to the second part of the question that's probably in contradiction to 3/4 of the attendees here. I would rather the first shot go through the lungs and not worry about breaking bones. I want every shot thereafter to be breaking bones. I know a lot of the guys here are going to say, no, try to break a major front shoulder on the first shot. If you tear a big enough hole in the lungs, he's going to die. So I would really rather that someone be thinking about that, because I find that a lot of people don't actually know the structure of the bear as well as they think they do. So this whole, break